My name is Flora Novick, and as I said yesterday, I had a crippling fear of elevators up until a year ago. I would not step onto an elevator unless it was with someone that I wanted to die with. Pretty much my mom is the only one that qualified for that. I'm not sure what I was afraid of. I just would step on, and sheer terror would come over me, and I might as well have been headed for the Twilight Zone because I was so terrified. Recently in the Times there was an article on different phobias that we have, and Stephen Phillipson, who is a director at the Center for Cognitive Behavior of Psychotherapy in New York, said the harder a phobic works to avoid the things they fear, the more the brain grows convinced that the threat is real. So I never had a bad experience on an elevator. I was never stuck in one. I was just terrified, and every time we got to a hotel, I would haul my 60 pounds of luggage once, even up 20 flights of stairs, rather than step into a box and be closed in and lose all that control. So for me, the thing that really made a difference was acknowledging that fear, taking a grip of it, and then facing it, dealing with it. And through dealing with it, discovering what my passion was and discovering what I could do once I lived a less inhibited life. So to challenge this, the first step is to acknowledge the fear. And Stephen Phillipson also said in that article that your instincts tell you to avoid or escape your fears, but what you really need to do is face them down. I had a friend who was terrified of balloons because she was afraid of the sound that they made when they popped. So she wouldn't go, she did not like going to birthday parties, and she was just terrified of balloons. It was ridiculous. So I interviewed her for my interview, and she said that what she had to do was realize that her fear was completely ridiculous, and realize that when she walked into a room, if a balloon popped, it was not the end of the world. Even after she acknowledged this, she'd still walk into a room and have that fear. So what she had to do was figure out what it is exactly she was afraid of. And once she acknowledged that it was a fear of surprise, or a fear of the loud noise that surprised her, she was able to get over it. And while she still sometimes gets nervous, she was able to face that fear and deal with it. Now she can go to birthday parties because she's not scared anymore. So how do we deal with our fears? I was terrified of walking into elevators, even if it meant that I would have to climb 20 flights of stairs. Even if it meant putting my luggage in the elevator, pressing the button, and running up to the floor that I pressed to get my luggage out in time so I didn't have to get on the elevator with it. So in another article I read by Skinner, who is a leading psychologist in behavioralism, in an essay he wrote called A Brief Survey of Operant Behavior, he talks about the relationship between our operant behavior and consequences. So what we do and how we feel about something is largely affected by what's happened in the past to us. Nothing happened to me on an elevator that was bad, but whenever I thought about one, I thought about getting a huge panic attack, and that made me never want to go back on it. So what I had to do was use positive reinforcement. Instead of, when I went onto an elevator, realize that whenever I pressed the button, it would actually bring me to that floor, and the door would open up, and I wouldn't fall into a great abyss that was underneath every elevator shaft. And then also I had options. I could call the person on the emergency telephone and tell them I was stuck, or I could, if worst case scenario, climb up the top, up the elevator shaft to safety. I had options. I was not stuck like I thought I would be. So the question for me comes down to, and I'm sure this is a question you've all heard before, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Lisa Hammond, who is a CEO of Female Creations, which is a catalog that's hugely successful, wrote a book called Dream Big, Finding the Courage to Follow Your Dreams and Laugh at Your Nightmares. What she said was, I find this to be one of the most clarifying questions we can ask ourselves. When we eliminate all our self-doubts and remove all our inner critics, we have a better chance of getting at the truth. We open up options for ourselves when we're not inhibited by our fears. Recently, my family went on vacation to Grand Cayman, and my whole family was going scuba diving. And I was terrified because I like breathing and I like to have access to air. So this is not an option for me, and it never would have been in the past. So I was finally convinced because the instructor was really cute and my whole family was going. So I got on the boat and I was terrified, but I could overcome that, and I plunged into the water, and I found that there was really nothing to be afraid of. Once I got into the water, it was like discovering this whole new world, and I wasn't terrified. I wasn't scared at all because there was nothing to be afraid of once I saw what it was. To end, this is a quote by Marianne Williamson, who is a life coach. So she said, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? We were born to make manifest the glory of God or any other higher power that is within us. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same." To me, this quote means that where can you be lifted if you muster up the courage to climb onto that elevator in your life? Or what new world can you discover if you just take the plunge into the unknown?